some people become so good at carrying the weight for others that they fail to recognize when that load has become too heavy to carry alone. They stay calm in a crisis. They carry their teams, their family, everyone else's needs. And because they keep performing, because they keep appearing resilient, everyone assumes they're fine. My guest today, Tammy Ward, knows the real cost of that assumption. When I first heard her speak about the cost of staying silent, I knew I had to have her on the show. Not because of what she had endured, but because of what she chose to build from that experience. Tammy is a retired RCMP surgeon who served for 24 years in Canada. After navigating trauma, loss, and the pressures of her job, she turned those experiences into a mission. Today, she's an international speaker, an author, and a workplace mental wellness advocate, helping leaders and organizations build healthier cultures through courageous communication, psychological safety, and resilience leadership. Tammy believes that everyone sees what we do, but no one sees what we carry. In this conversation, we challenge the belief that resilience means staying silent. We explore what it takes to ask for help, to listen without trying to change others, and to create environments where people feel safe enough to speak honestly. If you're the dependent person still carrying everything by yourself and still saying, "I'm fine," this conversation is for you. This is Tammy Ward's Build Regardless story. Tammy, thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me as a guest.
There's something you said the last time we spoke that I've been patiently waiting to unpack with you, and I'm glad that today I get to have those brave conversations. I know that you served as an officer. Remind me again, how long were you in service for?
For 24 years with the RCMP.
Okay, 24 years is a significant chapter of anyone's life. What is RCMP?
So it's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. It's our federal police force. So for the states, it's like your FBI. We do all the things that they do in terms of federal statutes, but we also do municipal policing as well as provincial policing as well. So a little bit of everything.
That is, that's deep. All right. So take me back to the beginning of that journey. Who was Tammy when she first put on the badge?
Well, when I started policing, it was never a dream. It wasn't a goal. It was my boyfriend and his friends. They were all talking about writing the entrance exams and how hard they are, and no one gets in on the first try. And I spoke up and just said, I should write the test. And I was told I was too little. So I like a challenge. And when somebody tells me I can't, I very much like to prove them wrong. Yes. So I did it. I wrote the test. I passed the test. And I was like, oh, okay. My ex-boyfriend, he didn't pass the test. Only one of the group passed. And as I went through, I was the only one that made it to the end. And then I got an offer to go to training. And I was like, oh, I don't even know if I want to do this, but it wouldn't look bad on a resume. So off I went to training. And that was hard because the class had, I think it was 62 or 52 candidates, and there was only 6 women and only 5 of us graduated. So it was hard, definitely being one of few. And then this is over 30 years ago too. So there wasn't a lot of women back then. There still isn't in policing, especially in the RCMP. We are presently still 5-1 men to women in that force.
To the second part of my question, because I know that being an officer, there are some experiences that happen, certain things that happen that interrupted your life, your worldview, and eventually led to who you are today. Take us back to that moment. What happened, and how did that shape Tammy today?
Well, there's a lot of moments that shaped who I am today in policing. You get to see the best in people, but unfortunately, you get to see the very worst in people as well. And it was hard to face all of the trauma because you're dealing with people. And unfortunately, nice people, you're only dealing with them if you're giving them a ticket or on the worst day of their lives. It's not, like you're not generally dealing in a positive manner with a lot of people unless you're in a specialized unit, which I did have the opportunity to work in. So I worked in community-based policing. So I got to do some positive work. I did a lot of work with youth that was positive, that was creating change. Even when I held our domestic violence portfolio, I was creating change and making it better for women coming forward, unfortunately, dealing with violence. I think the biggest catalyst for me in my career would be when in 2014, we had a shooting where 5 officers were shot, 3 were fatal. And I ended up becoming the operational NCO of the team the men were killed on and led that team moving forward. And it was hard to continue going when the person that killed the officers was at large for over 24 hours. So there was a big manhunt on. And then running that team, the men and women that were on that team ended up being off work for 2 weeks. So working with people from other policing areas that didn't know the city and trying to lead, and then having members come back slowly and helping them process and still continue to do the job. And one of the things I really noticed was how many people suffered in silence, including myself, because I come from a background in policing where we're told this is what you signed up for. Suck it up, buttercup. Asking for help is a sign of weakness, especially as a woman. So you just pretend. Pretend is a good word. Pretend that you're okay. And you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And that's what I did until I literally hit a wall. Because after the shootings, I lost 2 friends to suicides in a 4-month period that were officers, one of which, unfortunately, I attended. So that was really hard. And that really gave me a new direction once I ended up being off work and just focused on my own healing and what did that look like, and eventually asking for help. That was hard. And then being open to receiving it and moving through that. I mean, it's not like, you bump your elbow or something and you cut yourself and it heals. It's so much deeper than that. And it's like an onion. It happens in layers, and you heal in layers. And even when you think you have it all figured out, like now I'm in a good place, but there's still things that can trigger you. There's still dates and places or things happening in the world where, we had officers killed in Canada last month, and it was really hard on me because it was very close to the anniversary date. And so, there's always things that are going to challenge you. And sometimes that's when you need to, again, reach out for help, even if it's having just a conversation with a friend or somebody that you're close to, so that you're not just carrying it in silence.
I'm pausing to take all that in right now, because when you said being resilient, being strong, keeping things in, that is something that a lot of people deal with today. And I find it interesting that, it's part of the work that you do, helping people open up and speak out. But before we go into that, which I will get back to, during this season, from everything you've said, it's so obvious that you were carrying an enormous amount of emotional stress, across your professional responsibilities, your personal, and your health, because I know that you had mentioned your health during one of our conversations. How did you keep showing up through all those interruptions? And also in the moments that you appeared calm as the team lead, with a big smile on your face, what was happening inside? Because it's important for people to understand that while you have a big smile on your face, there's something going on behind the scene, and helping them identify this is key. So for you right now, I'd like you to share how you manage through that season. What was really going on inside of you?
Well, if I'm being completely honest, looking back, a lot of it was just, I was numb and I was just, reacting and doing what was expected of me. And when the shootings took place, I worked 44 or 45 days straight, and our shifts are minimum 12 hours. So
every single day?
Yeah, for 44 or 45 days straight after the shootings because of the short, we were short members. We had more members on duty because of fear of other things that could take place and everybody just being on high alert. And then also the volume of calls were increased because everybody was feeling what had happened. So people would hear a car backfire and then we'd get another call for gunshots. Or I remember one incident, we got a phone call, a 911 call that a gentleman was walking down the road with a shotgun. He wasn't walking down the road with a shotgun. He was walking down the road on the way to the pool hall with his pool cue in a black bag over his shoulder. Somebody saw that and they're just reacted. Yeah. So the volume of calls and everything was just, heightened. Everybody was on, tension was high and people were nervous for, good reasons, because that was in a little town where things like that don't happen. Those happen in the big cities. But if it was in, some little community or where the population is about 100,000, you might not have the same expectation of that level of violence happening. So it really rocked the community hard. And then for myself, I've always been in fitness. I've always run and trained in the gym and stuff. And I thought that I had a great coping mechanism because I ran every day. I'd run before my shift. I'd run after my shift. Sometimes I'd ran both. It was my way of coping, except my healthy habit turned into an unhealthy habit because I did it every single day. I also ran to the point that I would throw up or almost throw up before I'd even turn around and run back. And that was how I was numbing myself, and coping was just running. And then I was still going to the gym. I'm one of those weird people, when I get stressed, I completely forget about food. And unlike 99.9% of police officers, my blood pressure does a really weird thing and it goes lower instead of goes higher. So when you add all that together, and over 4 months of me living that way, I lost almost 20 pounds. And I'm not real big to start with. So almost 20 pounds was a lot to lose. And when my second friend died by suicide, that's when I hit a wall and was off work for a while.
Did you have anyone you could talk to about the things that you were experiencing, what you were dealing with that period? Now, I see you shaking your head. Why? Why didn't you ask for help?
It's not something you're trained to do. We're trained to respond. We're trained on weapons. We're trained on law. We're trained on so many things, but we are not trained. Neither is any first responder. I don't even think doctors and nurses, we are not trained with what do you do afterwards? Do once you've been involved in something that traumatic. What do you do when you've seen something that rocks you to your core or hurts you? We're not trained on how you process that. How do you vocalize it? And like I said, I worked so much, I just was detached. I was also in charge of the team. So as the leader, I'm not going to, I have to be there. I have to be the one making sure everyone else is okay. And nobody was making sure I was okay. And as far as talking, and I think it would be the same for most first responders, is you don't take it home because you don't want to share those horrible things with your family. You don't want to traumatize them with the horrible things you saw, or, that we witnessed. It's not something that people want to know or need to know. And you just get used to being quiet, which is really unfortunate. There's not things in place for us. It's getting better. They do have some, critical incident stress debriefings now after certain incidents and all that. But as far as having someone to talk to, I didn't. And I'm also, I think a part of it too is being female in a man's world, as a woman speaking up or out, there's even more, like, you're seen as more weak. If a man cried, I've seen it. If a man cries, it's like, oh, what a sweet soul. Everyone just loves him because, he's such a good guy. And a woman, if you get teary-eyed, you're weak. There's something wrong with you. I remember very young in my career getting a little emotional because we had dealt with something that was really horrible and it involved a child. And I was just like trying to keep it together. And I had a senior member turn around and look at me and go, "Do you need a tampon?" And I was like, okay, never, ever, ever cry. Never show emotion because you can't. And that was my mindset, is that you are not allowed to be human, basically. You are not allowed to be human. You have to do your job. You have to be strong, because if you're not, you're going to be seen as weak.
Wow. These conversations are really brave. But let's stay with the idea of asking for help, because it's not only for first responders, for officers. This is across industry for everyone. So many people struggle with it. Sometimes even at their breaking point, they don't know how to ask for help. For example, I would just suck it up and just keep it in and be strong, right? These days, I'm not ashamed to reach out to ask when I know something is beyond my capacity. But let me ask you this. Was there ever a time that you believed that asking for help was a sign of weakness? Where did that belief come from? And how were you able to challenge that belief and finally let others support you?
So that belief was just instilled. Like, that's the work. That's the environment I was in. And you see,
was it just the work? When you were talking previously, you mentioned your work, the environment, and also as a woman. So where does that stem from?
The work environment primarily, and then being a woman in the man's world. Like, when I started, I was the only girl on my shift of 18. So I found that for the most part, you have to be better. You have to be smarter. You have to be faster. You have to everything to be considered almost equal. And so that was instilled in training on how we were taught or how we were treated and spoke to, and then just experiences throughout my career and how people talk about women compared to how they talk about men, and opportunities and everything. It's that whole work environment. And then I think a part of it too is my personality. I'm a very private person. I don't share a lot of those things. I mean, I share lots when I'm speaking now, but back then I kept everything to myself because it was just safer. It was safer to be quiet as to ask for help. But at the same time that I wasn't asking for help after the shootings, I was making sure everybody else on my team was okay. And I was checking in with people and talking, and I had an open door policy, and it was inviting people to come and chat. And that makes a huge difference. And I got away with it, which is not the norm there. Like, I actually would ask some of the men, because I knew them so well. It's like, "Do you need a hug?" Which is totally outside of policing. But I had big men that were like a foot taller, 100 pounds more than me actually said yes. And I had grown men cry because it was the first time somebody gave them that permission to be real, be authentic, be vulnerable, because we aren't given that chance. And it's really hard too, because you deal with something horrible and then you got to get in your car and you go to the next thing. You don't have the time to sit and talk. And, it's difficult. And prior to that in my career, I had been involved in an incident, and it was a gentleman I knew, and he passed, and I had done CPR, and unfortunately, he didn't survive. And what happened was, when I left the hospital, I had about 5 minutes to myself to get in a car, cry before the next call. And that was it. And then the next day, when I was at the gym, I ran into one of the firemen, and I was talking with him. And we both knew the gentleman that had passed, and he was at that call. And he said to me, you should have dropped by the station. We all went back and made coffee and sat around and talked about hockey. And that was what we all called this gentleman. He was mentally challenged, and he was a beautiful human, but he knew every statistic and every player for hockey. And he used to stop and he used to talk to the police every day, and he'd go around the corner on his bike and he'd talk to the firefighters that were working. And when I was on shift and he'd talk to me, he'd always make a joke and say, "I'm going to take her out on a date," is what he always used to say. So when he died, it was really hard on me after, all these positive and beautiful interactions with this person who was just a sweet soul. And the fireman, he said they went back and sat around a table, had coffee, and talked about hockey. I got in a car alone and cried. And it was just like, looking back, it's like I did what I'm trained to do, but I didn't do the right thing. And what they naturally, instinctively did, and they have, they're able to go back to a station, sit down and talk. And it just like a light bulb moment for me.
You have this phrase, brave conversation starts here. And I love it, by the way. But before we can have brave conversations with others, we first need to begin to have those conversations with ourselves.
Exactly.
What was the first brave conversation you had with yourself? And what did that reveal to you about yourself and what you needed to start doing?
Oh, gosh, I've had lots of those. So I'll just keep it to that incident that I mentioned and then being off work. So for me, it was just not feeling right. And when the second friend died, it was just like, I actually let myself cry and I couldn't stop. And I was like, I need to go see my doctor because I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. I know I lost weight. I didn't think it was that bad because I had a 6-pack and I was in my 40s. So I thought it was really super cool until I went and saw him and he told me to stand on a scale. And then it wasn't so cool because I got a lecture. And he put me off work. Yeah, he told me that I couldn't go back to work until I gained weight, my blood pressure went up, and I started sleeping again because I was having really bad nightmares. And then he laughed and he said, "I've never, ever said that to anybody before, to gain weight and bring their blood pressure up." He said, "It's always been the opposite." So that happened. And then it was just my nightmares weren't getting any better. And I was lucky if I could sleep for 3 hours at a time without waking. And so I reached out to get a referral to speak to somebody. And then the first person I spoke to, it wasn't very helpful. It just wasn't a good fit. So then I just pretended I was okay for longer and I wasn't. And then I went through OSI, which is Operational Stress Injury Clinic. It's for military and RCMP here in Canada. And they are used to dealing with military trauma and the RCMP. So when I went there, they knew my language. They had already talked to people with similar experiences. So it felt more natural and there was a lot more understanding. And I didn't have to go in as much depth and detail of some of the things that I'd been through because they were already aware. They were situationally aware of the environment. And so that really was helpful. And I did that for quite a long time. I would go every single week and talk with a therapist, and kept going. And now I see one just every couple of months to check in. And I have a great relationship with them. If there's something, last year there was something that happened. It was a really bad trigger. And I reached out, and he was working and finishing up. And the receptionist said he finishes at 8 p.m., but I'll tell him that he really needs to call you. And he still called me. He had already worked his full day at the hospital in his private practice for 3 or 4 hours, but he made the time to call me before he left to go home, just to make sure I was okay. And then I saw him last week, and it was the first time, because now I get to see him every approximately 3 months, just as a check-in to make sure everything's going good. And I was updating him on all the things I've been up to. And when I was leaving, he said, I am so proud of you. And he gave me a hug. He's been my person for over 10 years now that I've been talking with him. And yeah, he's a very good human. And it was the first time for me when I started to open up that it felt like he understood and there's no judgment there. And yeah, I felt safe. I felt safe to open up.
I love 2 things you mentioned: opening up, safe space, because it's important that you feel safe. You don't feel judged. You don't feel like, there's something wrong with you. And that is a question I'm going to ask you as we go on. But after everything that you've been through, how do you define strength and resilience now?
Strength. Well, I always say, I've been saying to people that everyone sees what we do, but nobody sees what we carry.
Say that again. Yes.
People see what we do, but no one sees what we carry. And that's just not a first responder, because, people see a police officer, you stop and get a coffee, and somebody gives you a snide remark about, must be nice, that's my tax dollars at work, and it'd be like, I've been working 16 hours and this is the first break I've gotten. So, bugger off. But people automatically assume that if you take any break at all, that you're doing something wrong. But it's not like that at all. And even yourself, you're a professional woman, you're beautiful, you dress nice. People look at you and go, oh, she's got it all going on, But
Thank you.
What? On his background, people judge, but they don't know. We see people, oh, nice job, nice car, and oh, she's got a good looking husband. The world must be rotating around her. Who knows what's going on at home? He might not be kind to her. He could be abusive. She could be taking care of children as well as her own parents. We don't know what anybody is carrying. The old saying, never judge a book by its cover, is even more true, because people can look well put together and be falling apart inside. And they're just one little thing more to completely lose it.
Are you okay? That is, the first question, right? Because you did respond. I'm like, I'm sure you're wondering, But you see, that is often the first question we ask when we notice someone isn't quite themselves, right? Why is that question not enough? And how can we ask it differently, or ask a better question that creates that safe space enough for them to open up and share?
So, especially in the work environment, are you okay? I'm fine. Fine is a 4-letter word that starts with F. Let's leave it there. But It's a yes, no answer, and the boss can check off a box. Oh, I asked, they're okay. It doesn't open a dialogue. Yes, no answers. Have you ever been on a first date or with family or a cousin or someone and you're having a conversation and you're like, oh, did you enjoy going to this and this? Yes. How was this? Good. It's, it's not a conversation.
Just straight up.
It's like, it's the same thing. So we need to ask questions that are open so that people have to respond with a real answer, not a yes or a no or a maybe, but actual things. And the best way to get somebody talking would be, I noticed, never you look, because then we're judging, but I noticed. Now I'm taking ownership of what I've seen. I noticed that you look really tired. I noticed that, whatever it is you're noticing, and then create the dialogue, because you can finish that, especially in the workplace. I noticed that your files are really piling up. Is there something I can support you with? And then
I love this.
All of a sudden, you might find out that they're struggling because their child is sick. But if you've never taken the time to learn who you work with, and you only ask, how you doing? Fine. Then you're not going to know. So that's one thing I talk about is we need to build relationships. And just because you're the boss or the manager, or in my environment, just because you have rank doesn't give you the right to ask personal questions. You have to build that relationship first. Because if you don't even know that the man or the woman you work with has a family, has a spouse, has children, how are you going to respond when they say, my child's been really sick in hospital? That's why I'm running behind. Oh, I didn't know you had kids. Well, that's not a conversation starter. So you need to be aware, and perhaps, especially in bigger organizations, you might not be the right person to have that conversation. There may be a better person to have that conversation. And as a good leader, know that, because leaders aren't necessarily bosses. I've worked with people who have rank that identified them as a leader, but I worked with people who had less rank than myself who were very good leaders because they were good humans and they walked what they talked. They didn't just talk. And I think that's really important, is if we want to create a safe place, we need to make it accessible. We need to allow people to say, I'm having a crap day, or I'm overwhelmed, or I've got too much work. Like, we need to cut some of this out, or I need help getting it done, or whatever it is. It needs to be safe for us to vocalize it, but it comes from the top down and the bottom up. Top down needs to realize and create a culture that is safe. And if I was the boss, then I can create that by asking those questions and say, this is really hard. I'm having a hard time processing this, or I'm having a hard time understanding this. Is anybody else, not understanding this? And then you might find out half your staff don't know something, and then you can address that. And now everybody is on the same page, but you also validated how they're feeling. You just made yourself a human being, because now you're also equal to them. You're not, I'm better, I know everything. You're like, I don't get this. Anybody else on the same page? And it can create a work environment, that's better, safer. People are more apt. I think team building is huge. Depending on how you do it, it can really be helpful, and just create opportunities for people to work together or in teams or share ideas so that everyone's not working in a little silo. Because when we work in silos, that is, we work in silence. and silence can be deadly. So it's important to create a community and a workplace where people can speak up. And if somebody does speak up and ask for help, don't shame them. Don't make it public, but be genuine and supportive. And that is, to me, that's huge. And use the right words. Like one of my pet peeves in policing and the force that I was with, still to this day, is when a member dies by suicide, you will read that it was an off-duty incident. Died unexpectedly. What does that tell everybody else? Shut up. We don't talk about it. Keep your mental health problems to yourself. Because if we can't even name it, how are people going to talk about it? And how are people who are suffering going to ask for help when, we're so afraid of tarnishing the badge or tarnishing our image that we can't even call it what it is. And until we call it what it is, people are going to keep suffering silently.
I love how you're taking this back to the workplace, not just as an officer, as a first responder, but everyday life, home, workplace, across. But what does it truly mean to listen? So when someone finally opens up, they trust us enough to open up and then share, right? Take it from the other side, the listener. How do we listen without judging, without rushing to offer a solution or trying to fix them? Because this is what happens. Like you're there in the moment, they're telling you this, and the next thing you're thinking, oh, this is the problem. How do you fix this? How do we listen to hear what they're saying and not just throw a solution, judge them, or try to fix them in the moment?
No. So when we try to fix people and we give them solutions, we're teaching them to shut up. We're teaching them not to share.
I love that. I love it. Because you say that again. Say that again.
It's simple. And with my ex, hence ex, if I started to share something and he cuts me off and says, well, you should do this and you should do this and you should do this, then next time you have a problem, are you going to start a conversation? No, because I just learned to shut up. I just learned not to have a safe space with you. I just learned that I can't just share and unload. So I'll keep it to myself or I'll keep it till I have a girls' night and I can talk to my best friends. But we are conditioning people by our response. So the best thing, and I'm bad for it because of my work, I'm used to finding solutions for everything. So it's a challenge to be quiet. So sometimes bite your lip. If you taste blood, that's okay, but bite it and don't say anything. You just need to stay silent because if not, we're going to shut that person down. And if I was just starting to open up and you're already trying to fix it, but I haven't even told you the worst of it yet, I might never get there. And so we need to learn to be quiet and we need to just listen and just listen for listening. Don't listen and have the next question in our head, or don't listen and already try to fix a solution. Sit there genuinely and just listen and absorb. Don't try to find a solution and don't try to offer advice, because a lot of the times when a person is allowed that quiet space and nodding or I hear you. Oh, yes, I feel what you're saying. That gives somebody permission to keep going.
Right.
And now I know you're safe, that I can unpack everything. And maybe at the end of it, I'll have my own solution, or maybe there's not really a solution, but it was just a lot of stress.
Yep.
And I just needed to get it out of me. And I got it all out. And now I'm like, yeah, I feel good now. let's go for a walk or let's go make dinner or whatever we're about to do. But otherwise, if you cut me off, I'm going to keep all of that inside. The next time I'm going to keep it inside and we just push it down, push it down, push it down until we break. But if we can unload it and just unpack it, it's huge. It's like if you had a backpack and every problem you have, you pick up a big rock and you put it in your backpack and you don't have anyone that you can fully talk to, that rock is going to stay in your backpack till tomorrow. You put your backpack on, it's already heavy with one rock. 2 more things happened today. I put 2 more rocks in my backpack. Eventually, that backpack is going to knock you over on your face because it's going to be so heavy and you haven't been able to talk to anybody. So we need to think about unpacking things. And that visual hopefully helps.
Tammy, you are spot on. And we don't always, just add to what you're saying. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is we don't always need to have an answer or a solution. A lot of times they just need that person to sit down and observe, let them voice it out. And you might not be the right person at that point to offer the solution. You could redirect or just let them, share. I love it. I love it. Now let's take this back to the workplace, across workplaces. How can leaders create an environment where people feel safe enough to speak honestly about what they're experiencing? How can they create that space? And when someone does open up for whatever reason, how can these leaders listen with empathy without, trying to fix the person or turning that moment, what they say, into a performance issue? How do we take this, everything you said, and apply it in the workforce, especially for leaders leading teams?
Well, if you have the luxury and you have a smaller team or you have managers within teams, then even scheduling a weekly coffee with them, like a 20-minute coffee once a week. Or if you're really busy, maybe it's a once every couple of weeks, but just get into a routine that it's not, you get called to the office and it's like, oh crap, what did I do wrong? I'm in trouble. It becomes normal. And then you're also building your relationship. And then you're also creating that dynamic that you're going here all the time. So now I can bring things up because we're going to have an open conversation. There's a level of trust. And what happens there, the old saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. If somebody confides in you, your goal is to either listen and then how can you support them? If there's something wrong that as a manager, it's your duty to fix, then you fix it. But you don't out people. You don't share. One of the things that I say to people, because, people are, the Privacy Act, we can't ask questions, we can't this, we can't that. Yeah, that's important. We shouldn't be sharing things that we're not supposed to share. But we also need to think of privacy as in talk to a person instead of about a person. I should ask Vanessa the question on how's Vanessa feeling as opposed to talking to her coworkers about, what's going on in Vanessa's life? She looks tired, we shouldn't do that. We should talk to or with the persons and say, I noticed that you've been really tired. I noticed that you're arriving at the last minute. You're leaving quickly. Is there something going on in your life that we can help you with? Is there something that you would like to share with me so I can better understand what's going on? Because you have been such a great performer and obviously something has changed, and then you've opened the door without judgment. It's just creating an environment where somebody can say, and then maybe it's, how can I support you? How can we help you? If you have too much work, what do you think would be a better strategy? How do you think, include them in the conversation. If there is a problem, include them in the conversation of how can we fix this? Well, one of the things that would fix it, if I was the admin, please don't send me things at 3:00 in the afternoon when I finish my work at 4 and you need it the same day. I need to have it before lunchtime if you want it on the same day. Or when you give me 10 things and everything's a priority, what is really a priority? Like, let's streamline things, because if this is due tomorrow, this is the thing I'm going to do first. But if one of those things is due next month or next week, it can go to the bottom of my pile. So maybe we have some internal, system where this is a 1, that's a 5. So I know what order you need them in. Like, it's just creating dialogue so that everybody's a part of a solution. Because when I'm a part of the solution, even if I was a part of the problem and I'm part of making the solution, then I'm going to own it, as opposed to somebody else fixing everything for you. Nobody likes somebody else to fix stuff for them or take control away from people. So include everybody. And if you need to, host a team meeting. I've done that before. I've had everybody in and we've done a round table because there was stuff going on in one of the detachments. And I was like, okay, we're going to nip this in the butt and we're going to have a conversation and everyone's going to air what's going on, because I've inherited a lot of problems and I need to know what's going on. And we're going to fix them today at the table. And, it's your time right now to speak up, or it's not going to change. So there's all kinds of strategies that you can put in place. I mean, if you work in a big place and people are afraid of retaliation, you can always have a box where people can put in suggestions, or you could set up a link that just, on the web that people can submit stuff that it doesn't identify them. Obviously, you don't want them sending it from their own email because then they don't feel safe to send it. But you could have things in place in this day and age that people could honestly answer stuff. You could do a survey even, with all the different things that are out there now. You could send out a survey and people could answer questions honestly, because they're not going to know who wrote it.
Wow. From what you're saying, to be able to, have that kind of conversation with your team, you first need to build that relationship with them. Because I'm not going to open up to you if I don't trust you, if I don't know that you have my back or feel safe, whatever way that goes. But it starts from the leader creating that safe space, building that relationship and getting them to trust their leader enough to open up. Thank you for sharing that insight. For the dependable person who's listening to us right now, because there's so many of them out there, the one person who's still carrying everyone else and still saying, I'm fine. They're still believing that resilience means staying silent. What do you want them to understand about the cost of carrying everything alone? And what would you say to help them find that courage to open up and let someone in before they reach their breaking point?
Well,
that's a deep one. That's a deep one.
I think the first step is to sit down and just do an inventory, a self-inventory. And you know what? Sometimes we think, oh, it's not that much. I'm not carrying that much. I'm not doing that much. But when you pick up a pen and a paper and you make a list of all of your responsibilities, all the things you're doing, all the things you're carrying, all your to-dos, and you sit back and you look at it, sometimes it's a reality check like, holy crap, I wouldn't expect 2 people to finish that in a day. How can I expect myself to finish that? Have those conversations. Also, there's a misconception that self-care, especially with parents, is selfish. And it's not, because self-care isn't going to a spa and getting your nails and your toes done and all that. Mind it be wonderful, but that isn't it. Self-care, if you are a busy single mom, self-care might look like locking yourself in a bathroom with your favorite book for 10 minutes and sitting on the floor and reading, because that is the only time you got to yourself without somebody going, Mom, Mom. That's your safe space. But you need to identify whatever it is, or at work. Take 5 minutes, go for a walk around the building, walk up 2 flights of stairs, walk back down. You got some exercise, which is going to help reset your mind as well. But it's just finding those little things that are self-care. And if you're carrying too much, eventually, the card is going to break. We are going to break, because any one person, you can do anything for a short term. Just like I did. I worked 40 something days straight. You can do it short term. However, there's a cost. And we need to start looking at, what is the cost of me doing all of these things? Maybe the cost is, I haven't seen my friends in a long time. What is truly important to me? If I say my friends and my relationships, my family are important to me, then where are they in my time? Where are they in this list of the things I need to do? Well, if there is no time for my family, then maybe one of these things I'm carrying is something that I need to let go of. Maybe I coach too much. Maybe I volunteer on way too many committees. Maybe I need to reschedule some things so that between 5 and 7, when I'm home and the kids are here and we have dinner, we always sit as a family at dinner. Other than that, I can't promise you the rest of the night or the day, but establish things. And if it's a priority, then make it a priority and make it a schedule. And, I have friends that when it's supper time, nobody is allowed a phone at the table. Nobody. Everybody's phone is put over there, because when it's family time, it's family time. I have another friend that one night a week, they have family night and they play games. Not technology. They play board games. They play cards. They do something as a family, because the rest of the week is crazy. But this one night, they have supper and they have time as a family unit. And I think that's phenomenal. Like, that says a lot. And, they get to look forward to it, but the kids also get to count on mom and dad time. And as they get older, it's a little more challenging, because teenagers don't want to hang out with parents. They're too cool for that. But you can change things. You just have to sit down and decide, like, what are my priorities? And then take your agenda, fill out a calendar. If mealtime is a priority, and put it in your agenda so that every day at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever your schedule is, from 6 to 7 or 5 to 6, this is mealtime, family time. It's important to me, my health. When can I actually schedule to do a workout? When can I actually schedule, And we all think like, I need an hour to go to the gym, but an hour never happens. You know what? While I was waiting for the shower to get hot today, I did 15 push-ups against the countertop. And then off the side of the tub, I did 15 dips, and then I showered. So I got a little mini workout in. My other thing that I do often is make coffee in the morning. I call Papa Squat. And I'll do 15 to 25 squats while I'm waiting for my coffee. Like, you just got to find a place, and then it becomes habit forming, that every time the coffee's going in the morning, I'm popping squats or I'm doing push-ups on the countertop. It's just finding that place to make it work.
Oh, I love the part about coffee. While it's brewing, just do something, right? There's no excuse. I have one last question for you, Tammy. After everything you've lived and experienced, what did you once value that no longer matters to you, and what matters to you now?
I think one of the things, after everything that I've been through, and this might sound horrible, but I really don't care what anyone thinks anymore.
Yes.
Just because I cared so much, And, I don't want anyone to think I'm weak. I don't want anyone to think I'm not strong enough or too little or this or that. You have to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. Perfect, 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 perfectly tired, perfectly sad, perfectly everything. But just let it go, because you know what? Those people that I barely know, they're not taking away my birthday. At this age, I wish they would, but they're not taking it away. They aren't the people I call when I have a bad day. They're not the people I call when I want to go out and have a meal with a friend. They're not my people. So why waste our time and our energy worrying about what people think? Because you know what? It's pretty selfish to think that they even care. Like they probably have a million other things going on in their head that I'm worried that they're thinking, look at what she's wearing. They might not even have noticed me walk by, and I'm worried that they might notice that I didn't iron my dress right. Like it's ridiculous. Like we waste so much time and energy on worrying about everybody else that we should just put it back into ourselves, not selfishly or egotistically, but just put that energy back into ourselves and be confident with what we have and the gifts that God gave us and use those to do good. And then it takes so much pressure off of us. And it's, how I talked about we all carry way too much. Well, that's something that's one big boulder we can take out of that backpack when we let go of worrying what people think. Now, there are people that matter. Like I would never want to disappoint my mama because I'd hear about it, and that's important to me. Or I would never do anything intentionally to hurt somebody I care about. I would never be disrespectful to somebody. Just like I think it's really important, especially as women or as anybody, but I think as women especially, to have enough self-respect and to take care of ourselves without worrying about somebody else's opinion. Like dress for yourself, be comfortable in your body, and just feel good about you without worrying. And I wish this conversation that I just said, I wish my 20-year-old self thought that way, because she wasted so much time worrying about what everybody else thought, worrying about being skinny, worrying about being perfect, that now I'm like, dang, those are years I'll never get back. That was a lot of energy that could have went elsewhere.
Tammy. These conversations are brave, and I love that we're having them. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and I'm glad that people 20 years, 30, 40s would listen to this and ask themselves those questions. So these brave conversations that we started here today will continue, and it would help them wherever they are in their journey rebuilding. I'm sure of it. Thank you again for showing up and having these conversations with me today.
Thanks, Vanessa. It's fun. I can't believe time went this fast.
Thank you for making the time to watch or listen to this conversation. My hope is that something my guest shared today stayed with you. Please share this with another builder who may need to listen to this conversation. And don't forget to subscribe to the BuildRegardless podcast if you have not. Your support allows the stories we share to reach more builders navigating difficult seasons of their own. Until next time, keep building regardless.